Hi, great to see you all. Good afternoon, or I guess good noon. Hi. My name is David. I am a software engineer at Credit Karma. We're in San Francisco. I'll talk to you a little bit more about what Credit Karma is all about, but I also want to tell you mostly about how it is that I got to be here in front of you and how it is that I got to be a software engineer at Credit Karma, because that isn't quite where I would have imagined myself being when I was your age. So there's a lot of stuff to go through. So I guess one question that I'd love to ask you guys is, how many of you know exactly what you want to be when you grow up? Awesome. Like half of you. That's pretty impressive. How many of you have absolutely no idea what you want to be when you grow up? Great. Also about half of you. So I'm here to tell you that there's good news. You don't have to be in either one of those situations, and you may wind up changing your mind, and all of that is good. So I'm originally from Denver. Do you guys know where Denver is? Yep. It's the capital of Colorado. You guys have got it. It's right in the middle of the country, and it's beautiful. It's right up next to the mountains. It's a fantastic place. Anybody ever been there? Yep, it's a connecting hub for United. So yeah, a lot of folks have been through the airport. So this is Denver, and that is what I looked like when I was about your age. I used to be, a kid. I was really involved in middle school with like math competitions. This is an Odyssey of the Mind competition. But I loved math, I loved science, but when I was your age, I was convinced that I was going to be a spy. Because I loved James Bond movies, and I loved reading Tom Clancy novels, and I was sure that I was going to be a spy. But when you're a teenager or right before you're a teenager, you can't really do a whole lot of spy-like stuff. You spend most of your time like hanging out, playing games, playing on your computer. I was lucky enough when I was little to have a computer, and I started playing around on my computer, and I found this thing called QBasic. And I messed with it a little bit, and I got to a point with QBasic about where you guys got today. You guys have done the Raspberry Pi stuff, right? You guys did Sonic Pi, and maybe you guys did too. So I got right around there. I learned about conditionals. I learned a little bit about loops. But it was entirely playing around on my own. I didn't really get all that good, but I knew that I enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed Star Wars. And I had a really good friend who came to me, and he said, hey, would you like, in middle school, would you like to join a Star Wars online group with me? And I said, sure, because, Star Wars is great, right? Who doesn't love Star Wars? So I joined this group, and it turned out that he and I wrote all of the HTML for the website. So I got to learn a little bit about how to design a website. And this was in middle school. You guys, too, can write your own websites. It's really easy. You just read the code. You can have access to the code on every website you go to, which is pretty neat. And I also really liked playing around on my graphing calculator. I loved math, and you guys probably, how many of you guys use graphing calculators? Wow, a couple. That's impressive. You guys must be pretty good at math. Graphing calculators probably you're going to use a lot in high school. Back in my day, you could download games onto them. You could play like Tetris or Mario. That was really fun. So I learned how to program also by playing around on my TI-85. I started programming an adventure game where you could go out and like find a sword and fight an ogre and all of that. But I didn't expect to be involved in programming. Again, I wanted to be a spy. So I learned French, and I learned Spanish, and I went to college, and I wanted to learn how to be a spy. So I left Denver, and I went to Yale University. Do you guys know where Yale is? Yeah, what do you think? Sorry? Virginia? It's close to Virginia. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's okay. One more guess? Yeah, right all the way in the back. New York, it's very close to New York. It's right next to New York. It's in Connecticut. but it's within an hour's train ride of New York. It's all the way over here, and this is what Yale looks like. It's very beautiful. It's very lovely. So I took some classes at Yale. I took Japanese, and I started taking some international studies courses, and it turns out that I didn't like international studies. And it also turns out that being a spy, you got to do all kinds of tricky things, like lying to people, sometimes killing people. I didn't want to do that. That's not fun. But I got really involved in other things. I majored in physics, but the thing that I got involved most with in college was singing. So this is actually taken at a concert in Japan. I got to travel to Japan with this group. But the group that I sang with for much of college was a group called Shades. And it was a group that was formed to sing music of the African American tradition, or the African diaspora. Most of the members of the group were African American or black. And I'm not. So it was a really great opportunity for me to learn about what it's like to be black at Yale. And it was a great opportunity for me to feel like I was not part of a majority group. I think it opened my eyes to great experiences. And definitely, the coolest thing I've ever done in my life was traveling with this group to sing at the enthronement of a king in South Africa. They still have kings in South Africa. It's kind of like what our Native American reservations are like. There are places called homelands, and we sang at the enthronement of a king. It's amazing. So that was one group that I sang with. I also sang with a different group, and we got to travel to Australia. This is my choir from college. And this choir also was where I met some really important people. The most important person I met in this choir wound up becoming my wife. So, aw. Right. There you go, yeah. You join a choir and all of a sudden you fall in love. But there were some other cool people in this choir. This guy, have any of you guys heard of Max Gladstone? The Craft sequence? I don't know. Sci-fi fantasy? Yeah, maybe. Awesome. It's a sci-fi fantasy series that he's the author. He was in my choir. Any of you use Splitwise? It's an app that allows you to share costs. A bunch of people are nodding. Nice. A bunch of the coordinators. This guy is the guy who wrote that program. That's John Bittner. He was in my choir too. And then that guy is the guy who gave me my first programming job. And I'll talk about him in a little bit. So I moved from Connecticut because I fell in love with this woman. She was great, and we spent a little time. I worked at Yale in the admissions office for 3 years. She was a year behind me. That's why I stuck around in New Haven. And then she moved to New Jersey. We spent 2 years apart, and we decided, you know what, let's move in together when you start medical school. And she started medical school at the University of Pennsylvania. Do you guys know what city that's in? It's in Pennsylvania. What city, though? Yeah, go ahead. Pittsburgh is a good guess. It's on the other side of the state. No worries. That is in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Philadelphia. It's in Philadelphia, which is actually there. I don't know if you knew where Philadelphia was, but that's where it is. That's what Philadelphia looks like. It's a beautiful city. I think a lot of people think it's not a great city. It's a wonderful city, and I had many great years there. When I moved to Philadelphia, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, because I liked hanging out with young people like you guys. And so I spent 5 years as a math teacher because I loved math. I loved interacting with students. And I really enjoyed it. I also got to be the coach of the cross-country team. These are all of our runners at the Shipley School where I used to teach. And I enjoyed it very much, but I didn't think that I was personally growing in my life. I wasn't learning a whole lot as a teacher. So when my wife finished up medical school and was looking for a job as a doctor, we wound up moving to this other place that you guys have probably heard of. You guys know where that is? I mean, it's San Francisco. There you go. Yeah, it's the Bay Area, exactly. That's San Francisco. So we moved to San Francisco. You can tell I live in San Francisco because I'm wearing a hoodie. And it's 90 degrees outside. It's not this warm in San Francisco. It's only like 75 in San Francisco, but it's still quite warm. But we moved to San Francisco, and I did what everyone who moves to San Francisco does, and that is become a programmer. And I went through, in order to become a programmer, I went through a programming like boot camp. In fact, I went through a company called Dev Boot Camp that helped to teach me how to program computers. It's very confusing for me to be at DCB because I went through DBC when I was learning how to program. But it turns out that you can learn a lot about programming computers in a short period of time. Definitely enough to get your first job, but not enough to be an expert at computers by any means. And it turns out that you really need someone to believe in you in order to get your first job. And that brings me back to the guy who I met in college, who was willing to take a risk on me, and who said, hey, you moved to the Bay Area, you're a friend, you seem like a smart guy, and you just went through this program, I'm going to give you your first opportunity. And he hired me to work at Desmos. Have you guys used Desmos? Couple of hands. That's really cool. Have you used the lessons? Have you used the calculator? Calculator, awesome. So most of you who've used Desmos for the graphing calculator capability. That's what Desmos was founded to do. It's a free online graphing calculator so that you guys don't have to go out and buy one of those big, blocky TI-80-something calculators. You get to explore the world of mathematics for free on your computer. It's a great reminder that math isn't just in a little box. It's on your computers. It's everywhere around you. And of course, Desmos is beautiful. It's got colors, so you can make great graphs like this one that I made when my Broncos were in the Super Bowl. I was really excited. Desmos was this great company, and we also make a bunch of lessons that you guys may do when you move on to high school, geared towards getting you engaged with ideas in mathematics. And I really enjoyed my time at Desmos, but I also wanted to get some experience at a bigger company. And with the support and encouragement of my boss, I applied for a job at a place called Credit Karma. How many of you guys have seen our commercials? There are so many, right? We're all over. Yeah. So you guys have seen them. Great. I'll tell the marketing department. We're doing our job. Good, good, good. Of course, you guys aren't yet users of Credit Karma. You have to be 18 before you can have a Credit Karma account. I hope you don't have a Credit Karma account. That wouldn't be right. But once you turn 18, you probably will want to establish an account. But I want to explain what it is that we do. We provide a free credit score, which is just a number. And you can access us on the computer or on your mobile phone. So what is a credit score? And why is it important? Well, this is you. Okay, that's you. You, at some point, will want to go out and buy a car. It's nice, right? It's a beautiful car. Right. You're going to go out and you want to buy a car, but you don't have $15,000, $20,000, $5,000 for a used car. That's a lot of money. You don't have all of that money available to you at that moment. So how do you buy the car if you don't have all of the money for the car originally? Well, what happens is you go to the car dealer, and the car dealer says, it's okay that you don't have all of the money right now. I'll give you a loan that will allow you to pay for the car, but you have to pay me back over time. So the car dealer will decide whether or not to give you this loan and how much the loan is going to cost based on how worried they are that you're not going to pay them back. So the credit score is this representation of how likely it is that you will pay back the debt that you take on. If you borrow money and you can prove that you can pay it back, then people are more willing to lend you money, and they'll charge you less when they lend you money. Because the way that money lenders work, they give you money, and you say, I'll pay it back. And they say, OK, but you have to pay me more than what I gave you. The better your credit score, the less the interest, that additional payment, will become. And the other great advantage to using Credit Karma is you're looking at your credit score, you're figuring out what the factors are that go into that number. You improve your credit score, and you go in, and you're ready to buy that car. Ooh. And then the people at the dealership say, great, we're going to give you this rate for your car. But Credit Karma says, here are other lenders who will also offer to give you a different rate for your car. And you can pick whichever one has the best rate, so you pay the least amount of interest for that car. And the job that I'm working on right now is actually involved in credit card debt. So it turns out most people in the country spend more money on their credit cards than they can pay off. And the way that the credit cards make all of their money is you spend money on the credit card, and then you don't pay it off, And then they say, well, we're sorry, you now owe us the money that you owe us, and a fee for not paying us, and interest on the money that you haven't paid off. So month after month, if you carry a credit card debt from one month to the next, it gets very stressful. All of your debt winds up increasing in value. And you get to a point where you think to yourself, there's no way that I'm ever going to get out from under this crushing debt burden. So what we will do is we will contact various financial partners, various banks and various lenders, and we'll say, what options would this person definitely be able to get approved for so that they can pay off their credit card debt, or so that they can move into a credit card that isn't costing them as much money. And we figure out what those offers are. We then figure out which ones will save the user money, and then we allow the user to pick the one that makes the most sense, and pay off that credit card debt. And then hopefully at that point, the user is in a lower APR. They wind up spending less on interest, and they don't have this mounting credit card debt month after month. Instead, they have a very manageable monthly payment for interest. Does that sort of make sense about credit cards? About like personal loans and debt and credit scores? Yeah. If you say no, that's okay. You're not yet at a point where you need to worry about all of this. But it's really important to be aware that you want to have a good credit score. You want to establish that you're able to pay off the debt that you accrue. I want to leave you with an idea, though. The thing that has tied all of my experiences together has nothing to do with Credit Karma and has everything to do with the way that I've gotten from one place to the next. And that is this one final piece of advice. And that is, you should be open to new adventures. It's okay to move from one place to the next. I followed my wife at each step along the way. I took new jobs. And I think I learned a lot from each of those situations. It's okay to not get it right the first time. Even if you wind up with a job that you think is great, but you're not 100% sure that it's right, you can change jobs throughout your life. That's okay. And finally, the only way that you get from one place to the next is by continuously learning all throughout your life. It's going to make you a happier person. It's going to make you a better employee. And it ultimately opens a lot of doors. So that is it for my talk. That's me. Good to meet you guys. And now I want to move into an opportunity for you guys to ask questions.
That was great. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
So I think we have plenty of questions.
Great. Yeah. This guy. Yeah.
How does your company make the profit?
Great. So if we give you your credit score for free, how do we make money? It turns out when you apply for a personal loan or for a credit card through Credit Karma, the credit card company or the personal loan company or the auto loan company, if they get a new customer, will pay us a finder's fee. So the goal is we want to find customers for these companies, and the companies want us to suggest customers that won't get declined. And we only win if both the credit card company and the individual want to take the offer. Otherwise, we don't get paid. It's a great question. On this side, yeah. Yeah.
How did you change your mind from like choir to becoming a software engineer?
How did I change my mind from choir to software engineer? Well, I'm not a good enough singer to be a professional singer, so that's one. But how did I change my mind from teaching to be a software engineer? I think the main impetus behind changing from teaching to software was the move to San Francisco. I was happy, but not 100% happy at the school where I was teaching. And the school where I was teaching was so perfect. The kids were great. The parents were great. The administration cared very much. And I thought to myself, you know what? If I'm not 100% happy at this perfect school, I probably should try something new. And so when we moved to San Francisco, I found this place called Dev Bootcamp. I learned how to be a programmer and then got my software jobs. So yeah, I think over to this side. Oh, great, yeah.
What do you do at, what's it?
Credit Karma.
Credit Karma, yeah.
What do I personally write at Credit Karma? So I write what are called APIs. So I write code that lives on our servers that makes suggestions to people about how they can pay off their credit card debt. And I write code that allows users to figure out what offers they are most likely to be approved for. There's a big problem in the country. About 80% of people who apply for a loan or a credit card for the first time get declined. And that's really a shame. It means that people are applying for products that are not good fits for them. So I help write code that finds a good fit for the individual. And we're going to go over to this side. Great. Yeah?
When you suggest credit card,
Oh, sorry.
when you suggest credit cards to your customers, so you're saying that you only suggest it because the credit card company pays you?
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't really make sense because you're suggesting it because it's good, not
Yep.
because they pay you, but I don't.
You ask a great question.
Sense.
And it sounds like, can I rephrase the question?
Okay.
The question sounds like, how can you make recommendations about credit cards when they are paying you money, right?
Yeah.
And the answer is we don't make recommendations for the credit cards based on the agreements that we have with the credit cards for how much they'll pay us. We surface the best suggestions based on the likelihood that we think you are of getting approved for the particular credit card, and then your particular credit score. So your credit score tells us for any given credit card company, how likely are you to be approved, and then what is the APR, what's the interest rate, how much money are you going to have to pay if you wind up carrying a balance from one month to the next. We can easily decide which credit cards are better for you in terms of APR because the lower the APR, the lower the cost is to you. So that's how we make our suggestion. It has nothing to do with the amount of money that the card companies pay us.
Oh, so they just pay you money to get into that kind of pool for you to suggest?
So good clarifying question. You're asking, so the difference that you're saying is, do they pay us money in an advertiser model so that we'll show those cards to people?
Yeah.
And the answer is actually no. We'll show the credit card no matter whether they pay us or not. The way that we make our money is if a user applies for the credit card and is approved for the credit card company just saved a lot of money in advertising. They didn't have to pay for a bunch of different websites to show ideas. A user came to our site, found an offer that they thought was the best offer for them, and then clicked on the offer. So we get paid only if the customer takes an offer with a financial product.
Oh, okay, I see.
Thank you. Yeah?
Did your parents say anything about what you were doing or anything like that?
Yeah, so did I get encouragement from my parents? Is that the question? So my parents are great. They have all along said, you should do whatever it is that will make you happiest. To be honest, I chose teaching in part because my dad made a transition. He used to be a lawyer, an attorney, and he moved into teaching later in life. And I watched how happy that made him. And so I thought to myself, you know what, maybe teaching would be a great opportunity for me also to find the same kind of happiness. And it was, but it wasn't, I wasn't as happy as a teacher as he was as a teacher. And so I looked for other opportunities. They've been completely supportive throughout the entire thing, though. Everybody's parents are different. Hopefully, if your parents are encouraging you to do something, you love the thing that they are encouraging you to do. Give it a try. Like, don't be afraid to try new things, and also don't be afraid to change your mind. Question over here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Would I say I'm happier coding now than I was teaching? Yes. I think I'm learning a lot more day to day as a software engineer than I was as a teacher. I think the reward of being a teacher, from the perspective of having a student come up to you and say, I didn't love math until you taught me math, that is never going to be matched as a software engineer. And so I am losing out on that. That was life-changing when students first said, like, I thought I hated math, and then I took your class. But for my own personal growth, I feel like I'm growing more as a software engineer than I am as a teacher. And then you had a question.
Did you use Credit Karma, and how did you manage to move?
Did I use Credit Karma, and how did I manage to move? So two questions. Question number one, did I use Credit Karma? I am a Credit Karma customer. I wasn't a customer before I joined Credit Karma, but I've used it in order to apply for a credit card, for example, and I've used it in order to improve my credit score. And then the second is, how did I move? What do you mean?
Like, how did you get the money, and how did you rent a house or get the apartment?
That's a great question. Like, how do you afford to move? It turns out being a teacher is a wonderful thing. It doesn't pay that well, but it pays well enough to have an apartment. It pays well enough to have a lot of friends, to be able to sing, be outside of school. So being a teacher, it will pay you plenty of money in order to be able to live in a city or to move from one city to the next. So I had some savings saved up from when I lived in Philadelphia in order to come to San Francisco. And then how do I afford rent now? Credit Karma pays me money, and I pay my rent. Over here. Yeah, again.
Like, besides the Broncos, did you like any sports teams in Denver?
Great question. When I grew up, I loved the Colorado Avalanche. They won the Stanley Cup the first year they moved to Denver. Go Avs. I've stopped watching hockey, mostly because when the strike happened, I lost a year of hockey and I just stopped watching. I moved to Philadelphia, I became a Phillies fan. I love the Philadelphia Phillies. They're not a great team to love right now. They're a pretty terrible team, but they're going to be better. And when I moved to San Francisco, I wanted to find a team, and it turns out the Golden State Warriors are pretty good. So go Warriors. Yeah, nice. Did I like the Rockies? The Rockies didn't exist when I first was born, and then they became a team, and they were not very good. But I went to a bunch of Rockies games. They didn't wind up being the playoff team that wound up making it to the World Series in 2007 until I had already moved away. But yeah, the Rockies are a fun team. I didn't get that into baseball until I moved to Philadelphia and then became a Phillies fan. Over on this side, got another question.
So do you plan to stay at Credit Karma for like a long period of time until you retire?
What a great question.
Okay.
Oh, and?
Also, do they give like good benefits after you retire?
So 2 parts to the question. First question is, do you plan on staying at Credit Karma until you retire? And the second question is, do they give good retirement benefits? To answer the first question, I plan on staying at Credit Karma for as long as I'm in San Francisco. My wife, as I mentioned, is a doctor, and she's actually in the process of applying for her next doctoring job. The way that applications for medical school and medical jobs work, she applies to a bunch of different hospitals. And those hospitals all say, these are the doctors that I want to work here. And the doctors say, these are the hospitals that I want to work at. And a computer says, this is the best possible situation for all doctors in all hospitals everywhere. So in December, I'm going to find out whether or not I'm still going to be in San Francisco next year. If I'm still in San Francisco next year, I'd like to stay at Credit Karma for as long as I can. It's a wonderful company. But if I move away, Credit Karma doesn't have an office outside of San Francisco. And in terms of retirement benefits, Credit Karma provides what's called a 401k plan. Do you guys know about 401k?
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't, 401k is a way of investing money in the stock market or in bonds that is tax deferred. So you don't ever have to pay taxes on that money you don't have to pay taxes on the money as income when you're first receiving it. And then if you take it out after retirement, you also don't have to pay taxes on that money after you retire. And Credit Karma will do a matching program for the 401k, which is a really nice thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Folks on this
Do we have any more questions?
Folks in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Hi.
Hi.
Did math help you become a better software engineer?
Great question. Did math help me become a better software engineer? It's a complicated question, and the reason why I say that is I think that I am a better software engineer because I understand mathematics. But I don't think that you have to be good at math in order to be a software engineer. I think it really depends on the kind of software engineering job you want to take on. Some software engineering jobs are a lot more about design and user interaction. Other software engineering jobs are a lot more about processing a lot of data all at once and coming up with really thoughtful ways of handling a lot of data at once. The second kind of job is a little bit more mathy. The first kind of job is a little bit more like art. I'm not very good at art, even though I've done some user interaction design type work. That is a lot harder for me to get right, I think because it requires so much more attention to detail. The other stuff is just fun. Also, crossword puzzles are great. I don't know if you've ever thought about crossword puzzles. I do think I'm a better software engineer because I do crossword puzzles, although you don't have to be good at crossword puzzles in order to be a software engineer. Questions in the back over here?
Do any of the volunteers or instructors have any questions?
Okay. Yeah.
First off, thank you for coming and speaking today.
For sure. Pleasure.
So you mentioned when you're in middle school, through design, you developed a you did some web design. You built a page, a Star Wars page. What other fun things can you do with coding?
What other fun things can you do with code other than build web pages? Man, that's such a great question. So you guys are already seeing Raspberry Pi. So the Internet of Things and Raspberry Pi, this is changing the world. Nowadays you can have light bulbs that you can program to change color. They didn't have that in my day. I mean, my day isn't that long ago. But you can program through the Internet of Things. You can get lights to turn on and off. You can make sounds with your Raspberry Pi. You can program for apps. You can program for hardware, like in a self-driving car. There's all kinds of really cool things that you can do with software that's not just based on the Internet. What can you as middle school students do? All of it. All it takes is practice. If you have a computer, you have a way of interpreting the code that you write. So pick a language that you want to learn. I would suggest Ruby. I love Ruby. A lot of people learn Python as their first language. But if you want to learn a programming language, you can pick it up. There are sites online that will teach you how to be a programmer. And you can use Python or Ruby or C or all kinds of other coding languages in order to program like microcomputers, like your Raspberry Pi, in order to do crazy cool things by connecting to the Internet and connecting to each other. Yeah?
So if you could change one thing you thought of when you were a younger kid in middle school, what would you change?
If I changed one thing I thought of when I was in middle school, what would I change? Do you mean if I could go back and tell myself, you should change X or Y, what would I change? I would say do your homework. I didn't do my homework often enough. I still did fine, but I think doing your homework is a really good practice for having organizational skills and for like being able to follow through on commitments you make. I've learned how to do that, but I think it's been harder since I didn't do my homework. So do your homework. That's my suggestion. Middle school me. Oh, I've got 2 more down here. 3 more. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a microphone? I can hear you, but that way everybody else can hear you. Yeah.
Do you still sing and speak the languages you learned?
I still speak the languages okay. So I can still speak some French, some Spanish, some Japanese, and then a small amount in a few other languages. I don't still sing. I did when I lived in Philadelphia, but I haven't taken up a choir since moving to California. Another question over here, and then one more back there.
Do you like to challenge yourself?
Do I like to challenge myself? Absolutely, yeah.
And could you still speak it fluently?
In different languages?
Yeah, could you say it right now?
Which one?
Japanese.
Japanese? Konnichiwa. Nani o itte hoshii desu ka? What do you want me to say?
We've got one over here.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Did you attend Yale for your college?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
For all 4 years?
I did, yes.
Okay. Was it like really hard to get accepted?
It is. That doesn't mean it's great. It is great, but it's not great because it's hard to get into. It turns out, I think, this is, if I can teach you one more thing, other than my other pieces of advice, don't focus so much on the college you go to. Turns out college is great, but as long as you go to college, pretty much every college is going to have every opportunity, way more opportunities than you can take advantage of. So just make sure that when you go to college, you find the opportunities that you want to work through and use those as ways of growing on your own. Yale was a wonderful place. I have friends who didn't go to college and friends who went to different colleges, and we've all turned out to be brilliant, wonderful software engineers and friends and people. But Yale was great. I loved it. If you get a chance to go to Yale, you should go. It's wonderful, but it's not great because it's hard to get into. Question over here, and then another one back there. Yeah.
Can you sing for us?
Can I sing for you? Can I say no? All right. Some people are saying yes. I'll sing like for 2 seconds. All right. Te vieni alla finestra, o mio tesoro. Is that okay? Is it enough? Great. All right.
Did you play any sports in college or middle school?
I didn't play any sports in college or middle school. In high school, I played tennis, but I didn't really play tennis. There were 165 people on my tennis ladder, and I was number 148. In college, I played intramural ice hockey, which means that I played against other people in college, but I didn't play outside of college because I was never very good. But I did coach the high school cross-country team when I taught, because I started running later on in life, and they didn't have anybody who was better than I was, which is kind of sad. More questions?
Are there any more questions?
Looks like there's one in the back. Is that true? Or are you just stretching? Stretching. That's all right. No worries. Couple more over here. Great. Oh, nice. Yeah.
What's the best college to go to if you want a career in programming?
That's an awesome question. What's the best college to go to if you want a career in programming? There are rankings that will come out that will tell you that the best place to go to be a programmer is Stanford or Carnegie Mellon or Caltech or Georgia Tech. Those all have amazing computer science programs, but the best school that you should go to in order to be a programmer is whatever college you go to. You just work really hard at being a programmer, and you wind up being a good programmer. Different schools will have focuses. If you want to focus in like theoretical computing, if you want to focus on distributed computing, or if you want to focus on like hardware or theoretical languages, different schools are going to have different strengths from a research perspective. But from an undergraduate perspective, you're going to get roughly the same experience at different places, at least in your first couple of years of computer science. All of introductory computer science is going to be very similar. It's just a question of, will you love your professors, will you have small class sizes, and will you have cool opportunities to work in like programming projects and that sort of thing. So I can't make a recommendation about best place to go to. It's the best place for you where you're going to be happiest, you're going to get the best education, and you're going to find the best friends.
Where would you be now if you earlier thought you wanted to be a programmer instead of a spy?
If I had started off thinking I wanted to be a programmer, where would I be now? Probably in San Francisco. I mean, this is the best place to be a programmer anywhere in the country. There are so many jobs, there's so many great companies. But I probably would have gone to MIT instead of Yale, or at least applied to MIT instead of Yale, or Stanford. And then I might not have met my wife, which meant I might not have come to San Francisco, which meant I might not have been a software engineer anyways. So I think everything worked out exactly as it should have. Yeah.
Do you prefer San Francisco over Denver or Philadelphia?
Ooh, this is a tough question. Here is the best thing about San Francisco. San Francisco has perfect weather all year round and has access to the ocean and the mountains and amazing hiking and wine country, which is just beautiful. It's fields and mountains and golden hills. San Francisco has pretty much everything you would want if you could choose a place just based on the place. I have a lot of people that I care very deeply about in Denver and some in Philadelphia. So if I had to choose, since my family is still in Denver, I would probably choose Denver. I know. But based on location alone, San Francisco is amazing. And we have so many good friends here that I would love to stay. If my wife has a chance to stay, I'm staying. So there you go. More questions? Yes? What am I grateful for? Right now, what am I grateful for? So many things. I am healthy. I've had some friends who've had health scares, and you should never take it for granted that you are healthy. So health is probably the number one thing I'm grateful for. I've also been really lucky to have had the opportunities that I had. I had a computer growing up. Not all of my friends had a computer growing up. I got to meet my friends at Yale just because I happened to join the right choir. If I hadn't joined that choir, I would be living a different life. I would still be a very happy person. But I've had so many great opportunities that are not of my own making, that are just from random chance, that I want to acknowledge. It turns out the best part about life, you can work as hard as you want and you're going to make the most of every opportunity. But if you're wonderfully successful, a good chunk of that is because you did everything you needed to do, and a small to medium-sized chunk of that is because you were lucky. Never forget that luck plays at least some role in your success. No one does it on his or her own. And acknowledge the people who helped you get where you are.
So we've had some really great questions, and David is actually going to be with us all throughout lunch, so we can continue to ask him questions then. I'm going to tie it up and ask you one question.
Great.
So you had some really great advice for the students about how you decided to change careers, and what do you think made you successful in making that transition, and what kind of what would you tell them if they decide in the future they find something else that makes them happy and they want to try and pursue it?
Yeah, for sure. So if you decide to change careers, or even if you don't, when you first start in any career, find people that you admire in whatever it is that you're doing, and spend time with them. Understand what it is that they focus on, understand what it is that they think about, understand why they love what they do, and then try and see if what you love about it matches theirs. If it doesn't, that's okay. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to learn from people that you admire and you want to be like. So find a mentor. That's probably my best advice.
Thank you. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Thank you, guys.